Okay, we're recording. So, hi, I'm Catherine, and I was part of the gang group presentation. So, as you may know, we are covering Chaz Taylor, who at the time of his arrest was 16 and facing 5 felony charges. He led the cops in a standoff after he escaped. So, my section for the presentation was section 3, which included figuring out which of Yablonsky's categories, personality categories, he best fell under. So I'm going to dive in. I'm going to start on slide 14, which is the one I'm currently showing you. And these are just some characteristics about Chaz, which led us to decide on what personality type he best suited. So on slide 14, some characteristics regarding Chaz. He was a star athlete and a great student before all of his crimes. He no longer goes to school now, which I'll get into. He also thinks extremely highly of himself, which featured grandiose. He talks about how everyone looks up to him on the streets and how he has such great street credit. He also talks about how good looking he is and how good looking other people find him to be. Another feature, he had superficial charm and he lacks remorse for his actions. So when he was on the Dr. Phil show, he mentioned that he made it very apparent that he was getting arrested and was going to go to jail anyway, so he may as well escape, which is what he did. Also, Dr. Phil gave him a multitude of activities that he should do, including getting back in school or volunteering in his community, to make it more apparent to the court that he didn't want to go to prison, and Chaz basically blew all of Dr. Phil's ideas off. He also thinks that he can get in trouble for crimes that there's no camera evidence for, which is not necessarily the case. He doesn't fear going to prison, and he doesn't fear other inmates. Chaz has a problem with truancy and fighting at school, which led to his expulsion. He doesn't believe that school's important and thinks that life on the streets is going to get him further. When he was going to school, he was a troubled student and overall felt like school was not essential. He also experiences impulsive behavior. His mom, while on the show, mentioned a time that he got caught letting a girl into the house and got really mad, and he impulsively punched through a window and ended up in the ER for stitches. Another feature, so he felt that life in the streets would financially provide for him and his family. He came from a low-income household and felt that the bills were hard to pay sometimes and nice things weren't in the budget. So he felt like making money on the streets would help him and his family pay bills and, be able to get nicer things. He also was found using drugs. His mom said that he failed a drug test and tested positive for marijuana use. We do think that he has secure relationships with his family. He talks about how him and his mom, they have a strong relationship. His dad is also in the picture. They're married. He also has a younger brother that he really wants to be a good role model for, and I think Dr. Phil really opened his eyes to that. Also, he, at the age of 14, with his cousins, was found stealing a car, and he led the police in a chase going about 80 to 90 miles an hour, and he's still very proud of it. So that just kind of shows some juvenile delinquency in his past. So he also, upon his arrest, was in possession of a firearm. He was at a party, he was drinking underage, and he just started shooting around, and the cops got there and arrested him. And the gun was tucked into his pants when they found him, I believe. So he's also, I'm sure you know, is facing 5 felony charges, which include assault. So those are just some features about him that led us to believe that he fit into the socialized personality category that Yablonsky presented. So he was not emotionally disturbed from what we understand and what we know from the evidence that we found. He seemed to be just a regular kid that kind of went down the wrong path, and there was nothing mentally wrong with him that we were able to identify, or that was presented to us. He was very knowledgeable about his crime and his actions. His mom talked numerous times about he's a smart kid and he used to do well in school before everything. So we felt that, his crimes were the result of a social context. So, a result of the Muskegon community where he lives, street credit is very valued in their area. And, he grew up, his cousins had criminal backgrounds, and gang banging just gave status in his community. So, it was what he was around, basically. So, he was involved in gang banging and he had petty thefts. He also, in his eyes, crime equaled status, so it gave you street cred in the area, which is what people live for. Um, Crime shows corruption in the system, so he thought it was amazing that he was able to escape Detroit's finest and hold a 7-hour standoff. He was very proud of that. Violation of the law is easier and more appealing than following it. So gang banging for Chaz was easier and more financially desirable than continuing his education to get a more stable job someday. So these are all features that Yablonsky presented to us in the article, and these are all things that we felt, Chaz kind of fell into, and were all accurate with his case. So reasons why we chose that one and not the other ones. So we didn't feel like he could be a neurotic offender. He didn't present with any anxiety-based compulsion or fear. Again, he didn't have fear of prison, which is quite a big thing to not be afraid of. He did not have any denial of reality or fantasization. He had no displacement, no reaction formation, no evidence questioning his masculinity. He used marijuana, and it was more, so back to the reality, denial of reality. He used marijuana, but it was more linked to increasing his status in the community than it was to escape from reality. The gang provided for him. It wasn't an essential way to be heroic. It was just more of a way to fit in and stay protected. So, to the displacement, his actions weren't out of anger, except for the one instance where he talks, or his mom discussed his impulsion and punching of the window. But for the most part, the reason that he was in the gang was to achieve status and money. So it wasn't because of anger that he was in the gang. So we also felt that he couldn't be a psychotic offender because there were no evidence of delusions and hallucinations. And he was coherent, and he, planned what he was doing. He intended to steal the car with his cousins, kind of thing. He was a good student and a smart kid, so we didn't feel like there was anything that would have led to that experience. So, and then on slide 17. Yeah, okay. So we didn't think that he could be sociopathic or psychopathic. He didn't lack compassion and empathy. He talked about, he was the one that actually applied for Dr. Phil. He felt like he had really upset his mother for the last time and wanted to do something about it. So that kind of showed compassion for what he'd done. He knew that he was upsetting people in his life, so that was kind of a big deal. And again, he wasn't insensitive, so he was on the streets, initially at least, to help his family out and pay bills. So it wasn't necessarily for the crimes. He wasn't looking to commit them. I would say he wasn't necessarily not insensitive. He did have some sensitivity to him. So there also is evidence of healthy bonding and attachments with others. Again, it kind of talks about he didn't want to disappoint, or he was tired of disappointing his mom and really wanted to do something about that when he wanted Dr. Phil's help. He did not show evidence of antisocial behavior, and there was no evidence of callousness. He had adult role models that had no evidence of criminal behavior either. And again, back to the secure attachments, he had secure attachments with both of his parents and his younger brother. Again, he wanted his younger brother to look up to him, and when Dr. Phil kind of told him, like, if you keep acting this way, this is what your little brother is going to do. He was very, okay, I need to change. So he knew that he needed to change, at least if it wasn't for himself, it was for his family. Also, so some of the evidence outside of Chaz that I found regarding personality types. Personality traits are really useful in understanding decision making and situational reactivity, and they influence environmental factors in both normal and criminally involved individuals. So, also, personality characteristics that an individual may possess can make them more susceptible toward delinquency when paired with stress. So, delinquency may be used to displace anger or reduce and eliminate stress they're experiencing. Stress can influence personality and delinquency as much as personality and delinquency can influence stress. I really found that one interesting, because I guess when you really like look at it, that's kind of how it is. So, negative stress in an individual's life can cause emotional distress, and negative emotionality. And if the individual is unable to manage that stress or cope with it, they may act out more, or they may be at a higher risk of acting out um, unlawfully, especially. So, the inability to possess characteristics such as self esteem, social support, and the ability to make attachments and the ability to cope could provoke a young individual to act out more delinquently. The inability to possess these characteristics is associated with Yablonsky's personality type. So the lack of attachment correlates to the sociopathic, psychopathic, that kind of thing. So, one trait in particular, individuals who experience negative emotionality, which includes aggressiveness and stress reactivity, these individuals who experience negative emotionality are more likely to exhibit aggressive or antisocial behavior under stress, which can be linked to juvenile delinquency. Also, when paired with stress, individuals who are insensitive, which are also our psychotic offenders, lack empathy and are impulsive, which is sociopathic and psychopathic offenders. That's one of their traits. They may be more likely to act out through crime. And that is really it for my section. I did include my citations at the end on the reference pages. There's two of them, and that's pretty much it. So, thank you.